Coca-Cola spend endless billions on advertising every year, but will never once try to sell you on their products. They sell an idea.
In this video, I'll teach you exactly how to break down this clip, and if you want to support the channel more, just watch the whole video and leave a like. With that being said, let's get into it. Create a new composition at 30 frames per second. Now we're just going to create a red solid for the background. You can make this either darker or lighter or whatever color you want, and then we're just going to apply a fractal noise effect to this. Set the blending mode to multiply, opacity to 80, fractal type to subscale, noise type to linear, contrast to 85, brightness to 35 and complexity to 15. Open the evolution options and click the cycle evolution. Then hold Alt and left click the stopwatch. Type in time *5. Add this effect and change the angle of view to 70. And add a glow. Set the thresholds 30%, glow radius to 380 and intensity to 0.2. Now select the pen tool. We're going to create a mask around the middle. Once you've created a full circle, press the invert box. Once you've done this, you can open up the mask and change the mask feather so you get something roughly looking like this. Then duplicate the layer, rename it and change the blending mode to overlay, and untick the inverted box. Set the mask blending mode to lighten and delete all the effects apart from the glow. Now just change all the values as I did here, and as you can see the middle becomes a solid, which is good for when we start putting text and other things on top of it. And remember to adjust the mask, we don't want it to cover too much of the screen. So what we've done here is just made a simple move-in background, which really you can use for any edits. Right click, go to new, then solid, and rename this black bars, then press OK. Then add this CC jaws effect and set the completion to 80% and the height to 0. Go onto Google and save this image. This will be the exact logo that we're using. Now drag this into the composition and then go to layer and select auto trace. You don't need to change any of the settings, so just press OK. Now as you can see, this has created a mask around the text and it's already made the color of it white, so we don't need to change anything else there. All we're going to do is add the grow bounds effect and set the value to around 1000 pixels. Add the stroke effect and change the paint style to on transparent. Change the spacing to 0% and tick the all masks box. Also make sure the brush size is on 2 and the brush hardness is at 100%. Now add a glow to this layer and change the settings so it's the same as this. And finally change the scale to 110%. Now duplicate this layer, name the bottom one Coca-Cola outline and the top one Coca-Cola solid. This just helps so when we're moving around the composition we know which layers are which. Then parent link the solid to the outline. We can now delete the glow and the stroke. Now select the Coca-Cola outline and press P on the keyboard. Then press Alt and left click on the stopwatch. Type in wiggle 1,8. This will make it slightly move. Now we will make the wave transition, so create a new black solid and rename it wave transition. Move it below the Coca-Cola outline and readjust all layers so it looks like this. Now apply the CC jaws effect. Change the height to 1% and width to 14%. Press the stopwatch on completion. Then press U on the keyboard. Change the value to 16%. Change the shape to waves and move the center to around here. Increase the scale of the timeline. Now every 3 frames we want to increase the completion percentage by about 8. You can either do this frame by frame or skip to around 1 second and then just work backwards from 100%. Either way will work. Select all the keyframes and press toggle hold keyframe. This is what it will look like. Then move it forward by about 6 frames. Create a new shape layer, make sure that both the stroke and the fill are set to no fill. Zoom out slightly and create a shape like this. Then set the stroke to white and the pixels at 180. Open the shape layer, contents, shape 1, stroke 1, taper. Then set the start and end length to 100%. Left click add and then open trim paths. Create a keyframe at the beginning, then go to 1 second 15 frames and create another for 100%. Select both keyframes and press F9. Go to 1 second and set a keyframe for the end at 0%. Then create another keyframe for 100% at 2 seconds. Then increase the stroke to around 200 pixels. Select the shape layer and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. Drag this layer downwards and go to transform and select flip horizontal. We're then going to select the keyframes and we're going to move it so the shape looks more like this. Select the bottom layer and press U on the keyboard. Then move this keyframe to around 2 seconds. Now just rename these layers. Move them to around 12 frames in. Then make any final adjustments to the keyframes. You should be left with something looking like this, so all you have to do now is just add these effects to it and copy these settings. For this next part, we're going to be using this image, so if you do want to follow this exactly, this is the one we're using, and yeah, let's get into it. Open up Photoshop and mask this image out. Make sure that you delete the background and you export this as a PNG. We're then going to hop into After Effects again and just create a new composition. Drag your image into the middle and apply the black and white effect. Then rotate by 90 degrees. Then drag the image to the bottom about here. Duplicate the image 4 times and move them so it looks roughly like this. Keyframe the rotation so the images rotate back and forth in opposite directions by 3 degrees. Once you've created 2 keyframes, you can then just copy and paste them every second. It will look like this, then just do the same for the other 2 images. Add a drop shadow and a Gaussian blur to the 2 images on the sides. Duplicate these 4 images and change the color of them. Add an adjustment layer and add the transform effect and set the rotation to 180 degrees. Create 2 null objects and parent link the bottom layers to one and the top layers to another. Select the bottom null and press P on the keyboard and set a keyframe at 1 second. Create another keyframe at 0 seconds and drag it so that the images are out of view. Then do the same for the bottom images. Then hold shift and select all keyframes on both of the nulls. Then create a curve like this. Add a Gaussian blur and set the blurriness to 1. Add it into the composition from the tab on the left and move it to 1 second 25 frames. Then move the black bars to the top. So we're now going to transition out the logo in the middle, so add the CC Jaws transition. Also change the shape to waves. You can then set a keyframe every 3 frames, increasing by 15%. Once you've done, select all keyframes, right click and press toggle hold keyframe. Then copy the transition we've made and paste it onto the Coca-Cola outline. We're now going to add this text, and as you can see I'm using the Arial font with about 60 pixels for the size, and yeah, you can just copy all these settings. Then offset the layer so it pops in at 1 second 25 frames. Then add these effects and copy these settings. Then create text as I've done here. We're using the lemon font and you can just copy the settings that I've used here. Then go to layer and press auto trace. Again, you don't need to change these settings, so just press OK. You can then delete the layer below. Now add a stroke to this. Set the path to all masks and copy these settings. Then add a drop shadow and duplicate the layer. Move both layers here and rename the layers as I've done. Delete the effects on the solid layer. Add the CC Jaws effect. Change the shape to waves and copy these settings. Then keyframe the center. Then skip to around 7 seconds and increase the value to about 2000 to 3000. The higher this value, the faster the movement will be. Then just adjust these values in keyframes till you get something that looks good. Then keyframe the text so it moves up. Then position the layers like this. Now go back onto the cache composition. Select each null and press P on the keyboard. Create keyframes at 1 second 20 frames. Hold down shift and select all keyframes. Then create a curve like this. You can then go back in and adjust. Then create this text as I've done here. Press the button next to animate and select opacity. Set the opacity to 0%. Open the range selector and keyframe the start so that only one word appears each keyframe. Then select all keyframes and press toggle hold keyframe. Select both of these layers and press Ctrl Shift D and then just delete the layers that are made. We're now going to create the word product with the same effects that we did with the every year, so I'm just going to skip through this. You can obviously slow this down if you want to see this properly, but we're pretty much using the exact same methods that we use to create the every year solid and outline. Once you finish this, you can offset the layers so it begins at 6 seconds 24 frames. And this is what you'll be left with. Then go onto Google and save this image. We're going to use this in Photoshop and mask it out. Make sure that you export this as a PNG. We're going to create a new composition just for this, and we're going to adjust it so it's in the middle and roughly about this size. Add the black and white color correction and adjust the reds to -55. Add the Venetian blinds and copy the settings as I have here. Then add a drop shadow. Now add the brightness and contrast. Then open this up in the effects panel. Hold Alt and left click on the stopwatch on brightness. Set the expression wiggle 1025. Do the same for contrast, but instead write 5,50. Press P on the keyboard and add the expression wiggle 2,5. Then press R and write wiggle 1,3. Now we want to create a big bottle in the middle by adjusting the scale and moving it so it looks like this. Then duplicate the bottle and adjust the scale so you make something looking like this. Once you've created the bottom layers, you can then duplicate them and rotate the layers by 180 degrees. Make sure that you change the color for each set of 3 bottles so you know exactly which ones are which. Then add a Gaussian blur to the bottles on the side and set the value to about 3. Now create 2 null objects. Link the bottles at the bottom to null 4 except from the bottle in the middle. Then link all of the bottles from the top to null 3. Set keyframes for the position at 1 second. Then go to the beginning and keyframe the bottles so they're not in view. Hold shift and select all keyframes. Then create a curve like this. Disable the wiggle expression on the bottle in the middle. We're then going to keyframe this bottle in just as we did with the other ones, but we're going to offset the keyframe slightly. We can now add what we just made into the main comp. Then keyframe out the cache images. You may need to make a few adjustments. We're then going to add a Gaussian blur to the word product, and we're just going to set this at 4. We don't need to keyframe this in. Although we will keyframe it in for the text above it, but this is easy and you can see me doing it on the screen here. Now we're going to add an adjustment layer. Put this at the top. Add the transform effect and hold Alt and left click the position. Set the expression wiggle 1,3. Now make any final adjustments. Yeah, so that's it. I've been doing mock exams recently and stuff, that's why I couldn't upload this quicker, but this did take a while. But I'm glad we're starting to get into some more complex stuff now. So if there is anything you want me to break down, just leave it in the comments and make sure you like, subscribe, support. And also I'm thinking of making a video about like breaking down the creative process of editors and stuff, because it's quite difficult to come up with these things, but I think it all just sparks from an idea, and I got a few tips for how to actually start and finish an editing product, which is actually unique. So yeah, let me know what you think of that, and if you like that idea, maybe I'll make that video next week. And yeah, cool, subscribe.